Hey guys, welcome to the Mind and Body podcast. We are so excited today to talk about fad diets. And I'm particularly excited because when we talk about this subject,
Oh my
one, there's a
gosh.
chance, small chance, but Amber and I sometimes get tussling over the details or the nuance, which could be fun for those here. You do find people that are trainers, those who are passionate about nutrition, kind of, get arguing or talking about details, which might be entertaining for those listening in. So I'm excited about that. But particularly, I get excited because Amber is just really been studying nutrition. You're close to a certification in it.
Yeah.
And um, so you're just really passionate about it. So I think of that like that red emoji when I think of
The
somebody.
red-faced emoji.
Yeah, exactly. Where
Oh my
when
Lanta.
some like that angry face emoji when somebody starts talking about fad diets or they're propounding it as the magic pill, and you're
Right.
like,
The end
you
all
might be
be
sitting
all.
patient for a while, but in the end, you jump in and devour. So this is going to be
Devour.
devour. Yes. Yes. So this will
Gosh.
be really exciting. So, welcome to this podcast. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and beneficial. I think you will definitely walk away with learning a few things. We plan to talk on some of the top diets, the top fad diets. There's certainly more. There'll be more to come, I'm sure,
Dozens.
as well. But I think if you can get some of these top diets and you'll start to see some consistent themes that you'll be able to learn to spot, like, you know what, that's actually just another promising fad diet. And not all of these fad diets are equally as terrible. More what
Right.
we have a beef with is what they promise. It's almost like an over promise, under delivering, or they actually do deliver, but they don't set you up to win long term, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So we're going to dive into that. Now, I want to start before Amber jumps in and kind of breaks down what this fad diet is, what's some of the good things, what's some of the bad things involved in those diets. I just want to share with you like a couple of meta analyses that I have come across when it comes to fad diets. Some of these are old studies, some of them are recent, but
Hmm.
basically, these diets will come along the scene and they'll promise like, okay, we figured it out. We have the perfect, you know, makeup of macronutrients and or even micronutrients. We have this perfect layout to where you're going to lose a lot of fat really quick. You're going to gain,
Right.
significant amount of muscle or maintain that muscle. And like, and then they'll usually have other type of promises that they'll stack on top of that. And people end up going from diet to diet to diet, trying these different fad diets and wondering if the fad diet didn't work or they don't work or something. But the meta-analysis revealed that when you compare these diets, actually, so it could be like a ketogenic diet, paleo diet, it could be like a form of Weight Watchers, or could be, again, we could throw in a number of different diets that have been used in the past. The truth is that when calories are the same among these diets, so let's say you did a ketogenic diet at 2,000 calories, paleo diet 2,000 calories, and just throw in other diets that you would throw in, carnivore
Mhm.
diet at 2,000 calories, and then you have, basically, and sometimes these diets don't always, you can't always compare in this fashion, but if protein is the same, so if calories are equal, so 2,000 with each diet, and protein is equal among these diets as well. What they found out in these meta analyses is that there was no significant difference on weight loss and muscle
Mhm.
retention. It was exactly the same. So there, the eating more fat versus carbs, or eating more carbs and having low fat,
Mhm.
didn't bring necessarily any significant changes. The big movers actually came down to calories and proteins. And so when somebody promises, like they did like this study and they're like, oh, hey, we did this study where the ketogenic diet or whatever diet you want to throw in the blank, man, they lost way more weight than these other diets. Well,
Mhm.
when you actually look at the details of those studies, normally the caloric intake is not the same and
Right.
the protein intake is not the same. So the big movers actually had to do with uh, energy balance. It had to do with your caloric intake. And that was the fundamental, not necessarily like, ooh, there's this magic that took place with this particular diet. So what we want to really push against, and some of these diets that we might list, again, some of these aren't necessarily harmful in themselves if they're done right. But the thing that we want to check is, hey, is it a healthy level of calories? You're not starving yourself to death. You're getting good amount of protein so that you can maintain good lean muscle mass, which is not only good for aesthetics, it's also good for longevity. But is it something that you can adhere to? Because if you can't, you should be doing something different. And if a diet is, coming to you and promising you all these things, and whoever adheres to these diets and are promising maybe influence, I'm just saying this, these influencers are lying to you to get you to buy into their ideology and philosophy. It might even be a way, and sometimes they're confronted with data, but they still propound the same false evidence. And it makes me angry because a lot of people are hurt by it. And so we're going to dive into that. So, Amber, talk to us about some of these diets. Let's just kind of jump into one, kind of break down some of its components and talk about pros and cons. Which would you like to tackle first?
Well, first, before we jump in, we're gonna go over like a bunch of different diets. I'm going over kind of like some of the top ones that are popular right now. There is dozens more, if I'm being honest, but I'm just gonna hit the top ones that I hear most about. These are the ones I hear most about, especially when I was a trainer at a gym. I'd hear people talking about these all the time. So we're talking Weight Watchers, Keto, Atkins / low carb, because Atkins and low carb are very interchangeable. Then you've got like Paleo, the Mediterranean diet, and then you've got like specialized diets like the Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Optavia, all of those. All right. So these are the top ones. So before we get started today, first off, I want to come in and I want to talk to you guys about I'm not coming on here to like demonize these, but honestly, just to make it black and white, because I have a big problem with, I have been in fitness for almost 5 years now. I've been a certified trainer for over 2 years, and I've seen the damage that these diets can cause. Now, they cause damage because of this. They overpromise without actually setting you up for success, right? So then when you gain and lose that same 10, 15, 20 pounds over and over and over again, you then think, and I've heard this so many times, I'm not meant to be fit, right? Because you can't, once you stop the diet, a lot of people gain the weight back. And I am so sick and tired of hearing, especially women, say, I'm not meant to be fit. I was born thick. I was meant to be thick. No, honey, you're not. We were meant to be healthy. These diets just have us totally screwed up as far as our mental and emotional image of ourselves and our capabilities of eating well. Our society also does not set us up well. The extreme amount of packaged food, processed food, sugar and fat that's added into stuff to quote unquote make it taste better. It overstimulates our taste buds. So that's all that we want, because when we taste fruits and vegetables, it's not exciting. And it's because we're eating these chemically processed foods that make eating healthy significantly harder. So if we actually, one of the things I'm going to break down today is getting down to the nitty gritty of enjoying what you eat and being able to feel good about yourself and actually eating well. So let's tackle this. We'll start with Weight Watchers today. Sound good, John? Hey, I can't hear you. You have yourself on mute.
Oh, yes. So those who are listening in, I have 3 crazy boys, and one of them decided to be really loud while you were talking. So I was like, oh, I'm going to mute this. So what I said is, let's move forward, hit us with the facts. Let's run into this. Run into this. That doesn't sound too good. Let's go into this with caution. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna.
Oh, you're going to run into it. Okay.
I'm coming in tough. Um, okay, so let's talk about Weight Watchers. I'm going to just boil down all these different diets, what they are, what do they work, kind of thing. Okay. I'm just talking about the nitty gritty. I'm also not going incredibly in depth on these. I'm only going to pull out the pertinent information that actually matters in today's episode. Otherwise, I'd be here for hours, and y'all would get bored.
Don't think we
Okay,
would get
so
bored, but I get what you're saying. Go for it.
yeah, so Weight Watchers. Um, the one thing they've got right ish is they believe that like all foods fit within your diet. Like they encourage you to still eat what you love. But what they have it boiled down to is a points system. And per like a typical trying to figure out what you're supposed to eat, caloric deficit, they put in your height, your weight, your age to determine kind of your caloric range. That's normal. And then they kind of siphon everything through their points system. And it's a mathematical equation that they have for their own diet. And basically the points system is mostly to track added sugars, added fats, and carbohydrates. And they want you to eat only according to your weight and your goals. They want you to only have a specific amount of points, and that varies from person to person. All right, so overall blanket statement is that it's a form of tracking, and it's pretty cool. They make it very simplified, so I'll give that to them. A lot of people do very well on Weight Watchers because everything is simplified. The problem I have with Weight Watchers is they have their own mathematical equation that they don't divulge, right? So the only way that you're tracking is through their app and through their program. So you have to subscribe to that continuously. The problem I have with it is as soon as you don't like stop subscribing, you stop tracking, their point system. A lot of people don't know how to eat because they were basing everything off of a point system and not paying attention to actually what they were eating per se. So that's kind of the sticky point that comes in. And a lot of people that come off of Weight Watchers gain it back, or at least a good portion of the weight back.
Interesting.
So that's really like the sticky point. They do a good job of like being balanced, working on mental health and things like that. And so I give them props for that. But they really don't seem to get people to be able to continue to eat well off of their system. Now, however, that is kind of their point. They want you to continually subscribe to their system. And it's not expensive. It's like $10 to $15 a month, I think.
Yeah.
And it is a good support group. Like if you are in the Weight Watchers community, they're a very supportive community. But essentially,
I was just going to say, I remember my mom would use Weight Watchers. It was really big back then. And
it still is.
Yeah, I haven't tracked it as much. I just knew my mom was doing it. I remember her talking about her points and all that kind of stuff, even when I was a young child. So what you're saying, just to kind of recap, and I know you have more to say on this. So like really good things about them is they've made it simple for people to follow.
Yes.
The adherence is better in that they're not necessarily trying to eliminate any particular food group, though.
Correct.
If you're eating a lot of like sugars and stuff, your points, you're going to be racking up things.
Right.
Now, let me just make sure I'm right here in Weight Watchers. Points are good or bad? You don't want points. You do want points.
You're given a set amount of points that you have to stay within.
Oh, okay. Got it. So, so the good thing is it's easy to follow. It's, not necessarily like trying to limit food altogether, so people can still eat what, they enjoy and things like that within reason. And another interesting fact is they introduce gamification. It feels like the point thing makes it's like a little bit of a competition, at least with yourself. And do they have? I'm not familiar with the community as much. Do they have competitions with among
They
each
don't
other?
have competitions per se, but they do have meetings that you can go to, and that you do a weigh-in at every meeting. So it's very supportive community. Everybody cheers each other on and things like that. So I don't think it's very competitive, more
Yeah.
so as it is a very cheer each other on kind of
Yeah.
thing, which I love.
I do too.
I do.
I think community, and then the gamification. I've done some study into this. Like, if you can make something into a kind of a game, it just
Mm-hmm.
it heightens the entertainment value, and it
Yes.
kind of excites the competitive nature in people. Like, and
Yes.
probably everyone has a level of that. Like, I want to win. I don't want to lose. I want to get
Yeah.
these points, and that it's like those.
I want to lose the weight when I'm standing in front of everybody that the scale's gone down.
Exactly. And it
Mm-hmm.
taps into that dopamine hit of not
Yes.
only the results, but also like like I could see like, hey, I'm keeping within my points that I'm supposed to be keeping. That heightens the effect. So there's some good things going on here. But what you said that it lacks, at least right now, is that it lacks really good education for people to
Yes.
understand macronutrients, how to calculate, how to know that you're in a caloric surplus, balanced or maintenance diet, and then also a deficit. Like the balance of that nutrition, it doesn't really go into that. It kind of keeps people in the dark as opposed to that. So
Yeah.
that, and I'm not trying to paint them up as sinister here, but so that you
No.
would continue to follow their or be in their program, continue to subscribe to what you're doing. Is that right?
Yeah, literally, it's literally that. If I'm just being straight up, they give you the fish, they don't teach you how to fish.
Ooh,
Um,
good analogy.
yeah, and that's the only problem I really have with Weight Watchers is they don't teach you the how. So there's a lot of people who pick up on it and like can sustain, but I I have personally seen a significant amount of friends and acquaintances that I've seen be on Weight Watchers. They've done successful, but they've not been able to retain the results once they stopped their membership.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind if this is something that you are considering, that you might have to dive deeper into it than they into nutrition than they give you as a
Right.
resource.
This
So
hits on
that's my thought on that.
a really good value point that's good to communicate that we hold at Mind and Body. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we value is that educational point. And our goal is
Yes.
when we bring on someone to train or to give nutrition coaching to, our goal is that you won't need us in the future eventually. Like, we give you
Yep.
all the tools that you need. Now, if you choose to like continue with us after the point just because you're like, man, Amber is amazing. What's your
Love that
title today?
programming.
Smartest of smarts. That's the title
Smartest
of
of
it.
smarts.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this, but she has a title for our podcast. I think we should change this each time. This would be really interesting. I'm just boring John Beasley today, but yes. But like, anyways, we really value saying we want to give you the tools, not just try to keep you as as an ongoing customer. Though we like that as well, but we want
Yeah.
to set you up to really be fully alive and free and be able to execute on these principles. That was a great
Yes.
overview of Weight Watchers. Did you have any other comments on that one?
I do not. Those
Right.
are my thoughts.
Diet number 2.
Yeah, the ketogenic diet. Now, I know you have some interesting thoughts on this, so by all means, please share.
Well, I think I was reading a book by Dr. Lane Norton, who holds a PhD in nutrition. So he has, if somebody holds a PhD in nutrition and they're talking about diets, you probably should listen, at least
Yes.
get their points. If you watch his reels um, on the ketogenic diet, you hear him almost hating on the ketogenic diet often. But if you read his book, you realize that, hey, actually, he doesn't hate the ketogenic diet. He just
Mm-hmm.
hates the ketogenic diet zealots that are
Yes. Oh
promising
my gosh.
things that are just not true, like, or they're true, but just not fully in the right context. Like, for instance, you'll burn more fat if you're on the ketogenic diet. Well,
Right.
no dip. Of course, you're going to burn more fat, because when the ketogenic diet started, I know you're going to give us a bit of history here, but when the ketogenic diet started, um, people were eating almost as much as 90% fat in their diet. And That's a lot of fat.
That's
So
a
if
lot.
you take that fat and you begin to convert that to energy, well, what are you burning as a source of energy? You're burning that fat. Now, this is an
Fat.
adipose tissue that's being burnt up. You're burning that fat, the fuel that you just ate.
Right.
That's what you're burning. So, sure, you might end up burning adipose tissue as well. Sure, but you're really burning a lot of that fat. So, when they say you're going to burn more fat on this diet, what most people think is belly fat or body fat. See,
Right.
do you see how context matters? Context
Yeah.
is king. It is so important to get. But one thing that Lane says in this, and I'll just read a bit of his quote. He says, um, he's talking about in his book, and this book is the title is Fat Loss Forever: How to Lose Fat and Keep It Off. He
Mhm.
said that he's mentioned the ketogenic diet oftentimes in his book. And he says, to be clear, we don't consider the ketogenic diet as a form of fad dieting, like the diet itself. Now, there are versions of it that are certainly fad. Okay. But he says
Right.
that although zealots do promote it in a similar manner, rather, the ketogenic diet simply offers a different option for fat loss. The goal here is to go over, and he's going to go through this in his book, but he says the goal here is to actually remove the nonsense around this diet and he called it the sex appeal. Which he means
Yeah.
is like, people will paint it up and it's just like, oh, this is the new thing, this is the sexy option, you should go with it. And he's like, okay, I'm going to remove the nonsense, I'm going to remove the sex appeal. And he says, um, he goes on to say the ketogenic diet, um, it doesn't appear rather that the ketogenic diet is superior for fat loss when calories and protein are equaled. And that's what I was talking
Hmm.
about earlier. He says, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that some people don't find the ketogenic diet better for them. As we discussed previously, adherence is the most important factor for success. So we encourage you to explore all of your options when seeking to change and maintain body composition. There is a myriad of scientific and anecdotal evidence to suggest that the ketogenic diet shouldn't be thrown under the rug. So what I love here is he does this thing like saying, hey, I'm not saying that we should throw this under the rug and say this is categorically bad, but we should de-romanticize it.
Yeah.
We need to take it down to where it needs to be. Does it help people? Can it help people lose weight? Sure. Can it? Some people adhere to it. Yes. Is it for everyone? Absolutely not.
No.
It is not the optimal way. Some people will say this is the way that human beings should be eating. And if
Right.
you don't eat this way, it's almost like you're in, some type of sin or wrongdoing. And it's like, oh my goodness, that stuff needs to be shot down. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I know that I don't know what your thoughts are. Do you feel like the ketogenic diet right now is trending more? Or do you feel like right now actually it's people are starting to come around to, hey, maybe it's not as great as people have made it out to be? Where do you think it's going right now? Trending down.
I think it depends on what you label it, because I would say that low carb is trending really hard right now. And depending on how low of carb you go, depends on whether it's just a low carb diet or a ketogenic diet.
Yes.
Because ketogenic is like less than 50 grams of carbs a day. If you're eating between like 50 and 150 carbs a day, that would be low carb.
Right.
So it depends on how low. I would say low carb is probably trending more, like also the term low carb, than keto, or at least from what I've heard in conversations um, at the gym, online, things like that. But I still think that the keto diet is still very popular. And it's popular because for many reasons. One, people tend to see results on it, and they tend to see results quickly for many reasons, which I'll say, but also because it tastes good. Anything that's a higher fat intake is going to taste good, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what fats are. Fats are very, very palatable, very flavorful, which is why people really enjoy this diet. Almost too much, if I'm being honest. But um, yeah, yeah, it's a very interesting diet.
Break
What?
into some of the history. Like, okay, when did this start? To my knowledge, ketogenic diet really started from actually kind of an experiment, kind of
Hmm.
connected to some levels of fasting. or intermittent fasting. It started
Mm-hmm.
really like as a labeled diet, like in the early 1900s. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you know? Can you dive into that just a little bit on
Yeah.
the history, or at least um, what it was designed to address, particularly at first?
Yeah. So the ketogenic diet was actually just like a medical experimentation on helping people with epileptic issues try to bring down their symptoms. And for those who don't know what epilepsy is, it's basically a seizure caused by issues with uh, neurons firing in the brain. I have several friends who have epilepsy, so I've seen it in person. And so this diet was an experimentation to see if a higher fat content, low sugar slash low carb diet would help with these, lessen these seizures, essentially. Um, and it does. It is actually a proven diet to help people with epilepsy. It also was and is to this day used to treat type 2 diabetes, um, to help with symptoms of that. And following a ketogenic diet for type 2 diabetes can also actually help you um, almost eliminate that. But it is a diet that must be followed like long term. So basically, the ketogenic diet is extremely low carbohydrates. Like I said before, less than 50 grams of carbs a day, a higher fat intake, and then appropriate amounts of protein. And this is exactly where the issues come in, because people focus in on the, oh my gosh, it's a high fat content. I can have all the freaking bacon and cheese and
Bacon.
avocado, yeah,
I'm
bacon,
in. Bacon. Let's do it.
that I want. And then most Americans don't eat enough protein as it is. So when they go into this keto diet, you're only eating 80 to 120 grams of protein. Again, on average, like men have an easier time of consuming protein than women, but that's like the biggest problem with this diet is most people don't eat the adequate portion of protein. So they eat more fat because you're not full. You want to feel satiated. You eat more fat because
Yeah.
you can't have carbs. And this is when it becomes the quote unquote labeled dirty keto of you have just like this extreme amount of fat intake, low carb, low protein when it boils down to it. So that's like the only issue that I have with keto. If keto is done right, it can be done really well. When
Sure.
you're eating the appropriate amount of protein that you should be eating, and then you backfill that with the 50-ish grams of carbs. Some people eat less than that, and fats. Now, when those carbohydrates, those should be vegetables. And the reason I tout this, that it should be vegetables over anything else, one, you get more food, so you get more volume of food. Two, the ketogenic diet is also known for like clogging up your system. So if you eat the right amount of vegetables, you can
Yes.
keep that at bay, right? Um, and yeah, a lot of people just don't do that though, because a lot of people don't want to eat the vegetables, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's probably the one of the key things that like bothers me about it is people will go on the ketogenic diet to avoid having to eat healthy. Um,
Mm. When
and
I
we're
did keto,
avoiding,
like,
go
and when
ahead.
I did a keto too, I associated, like, I would look at a cookie or something like that and be like, that's bad, or
Yeah.
bread is bad. And I developed just a negative attitude towards food groups. And I
Yep.
had a hard time recognizing, like, well, I can't eat that if I want to stay in ketosis, which we might dive into, if I want to stay in like burning fat as a primary source of fuel rather than
Yeah.
glucose. But the if I eat this cookie, I'm definitely going to knock myself out of ketosis. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you're going to sustain a ketogenic diet, you need to stay in ketosis. That's the point. That's where the benefits would primarily be, especially with some of these. If you're addressing any of these issues,
Mm-hmm.
epilepsy or type 2 diabetes. You want to, if you're trying to do a ketogenic diet, you want to be in that zone. But I just remember developing such a bad relationship to food.
Yeah.
Not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying that if you're going to do
It's
ketogenic
very
diet,
common though.
yeah, if you're going to do a ketogenic diet, don't shame people who are not on it.
Yeah.
And stop relating like carbs to getting fat. Like if I eat bread, I'll get fat. If I eat rice, I'm going to get fat. It's like, it's just not true. It's just
Right.
the science does not back it up. I'm not even trying to say, well, you have your opinion and I have mine. I'm saying the science is saying that it's wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
However, if you want to do that and it's sustainable, go for it. More power to you. Just don't pass off bad information. Just to clarify, for those listening, you probably picked up on this. The ketogenic diet is high fat, usually moderate protein, and very low carbs. In the clinical studies, when the ketogenic diet was kind of coined, ketogenic diet, roughly 90% of the calories was from fat. It was like 6 as high as 9% was protein. That's really low. And then
really
carbohydrates was like between 0 and 4%. You know, it was really, again, that's the lowest. A more moderate version, and this is where most ketogenic diets hit now, because I think they've adjusted to, this is, what did you call it? A dirty form of keto? What did you call the?
Yeah. Dirty keto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A more modified version of it is actually still carbohydrates between the 0 and 10%, probably a little bit lower. Proteins is anywhere between 15 to 35%. Now, 35% would be high, but
yeah,
that's where some people would have it. And then fats would hit between 65 and 85%. But to make sure that you're still staying in ketosis, that the carbohydrates are basically the same. The variables now is like, okay, we realize we need more protein for body composition and overall like tissue turnover. You can't, fat helps you absorb these macronutrients, but if you only have fat or mostly fat, you're just not setting your body up. You're setting your body up for an overload of this, which kind of plays into that getting your body not functioning well, getting stuffed up,
Yeah.
But having higher proteins can really help with that. So it's definitely a more balanced keto. And I've seen, like, if you listen to different people, there will be people who really propound a bad form of keto. And then there's some that are like, you would say, hey, that's better. That's definitely more balanced. That definitely works.
Yeah. And I've seen good keto diets. The guy who runs Fit to Fat to Fit. Yes. He has, I have seen his program before, and he does a good form of keto. Like, it's a clean keto. He really emphasizes vegetables and a variety of intakes of fats. So not just actually, he discourages a lot of like dairy intake, like too much dairy intake. So there's not a ton of cheese. He doesn't say no to cheese. It's just not the emphasis of his diet. And he's very limited on how much nuts and things you should be eating. One of the things he does do a really good job at is he makes, when you're doing his diet, he makes sure that you monitor your calories. So that's also a key in the keto diet. A lot of people don't monitor their calories. They just eat keto and they just they essentially wing it. I'm going to eat whatever I need for this meal to feel satiated and move on. But because you're eating a high fat diet, a lot of people tend to eat significantly more calories than they should be eating. So that's another issue that I have. So if you're going to do the keto diet, monitor your calories. You still need to be eating in a deficit kind of thing. And then lastly, I'll touch on one of the reasons you lose weight so quickly on the ketogenic diet, because you are eating low carbohydrates, you are losing a lot of water weight.
Oh, I did. My first month, we talked about this before on another podcast, but I lost 15 pounds.
Yes,
in the first
but
month.
Probably a majority of that was water weight.
Oh yeah, I definitely could see it in my like muscles too, like body composition. I was leaner for sure, but I just felt like my muscles were flatter. Like I was just like, hey, I feel leaner, but maybe I don't know if this is great. Great
Yeah.
lean.
For
But
every 1 gram of carb that you consume, your body needs 4 grams of water to process it. So that's why you have that like that muscle pump, or that's why you are quote unquote feeling fluffy after you consume a large amount of carbs, because your body must retain water in order to process those carbs. So eating low carb means you lose a lot of water. So people need to
maybe we
keep
could
that in
start
mind as
something
well.
like eat carbs, be fluffy. Ah, just kidding. Not a thing. You don't think it'll work?
I think the fluffy was the funny part. Eat
Be
carbs, be
fluffy.
fluffy.
Um,
Oh my
so I
gosh.
know we do need to move on to some other diets here, but I want
Yeah.
to touch on if somebody is going into, if you're like, I'm going to try the ketogenic diet,
Mm-hmm.
just be aware that most people experience what is called a keto flu,
Mm,
where it's a couple
yes.
days where
Good
they
point.
feel real bad.
You're real
Well,
crappy.
feel free to weigh in on this and articulate this better or add some additional things. But basically, you go from this state of like kind of a gluconeogenesis where you're burning glucose as the fuel. So
Right,
carb,
which glucose comes from carbs.
exactly.
Hmm.
And you go from that to ketogenesis, which is burning the ketones. And that process, your body is kind of depleting its resources of glycogen,
Yep.
and it's basically turning over from the primary fuel source to the secondary fuel
Hmm.
source,
Which is fat.
and it takes some time. And also, there's this time where your body is actually trying to secrete enough of whether it's glucose and even ketones for your brain function. So you had a
Yes.
tremendous amount of brain fog.
Yeah.
You just feel bad. It could actually feel. That's why they called it the keto flu, because it just you just feel really terrible. It takes a couple of days for your body, sometimes as up to a week, for your body to kind of feel like normalize and switch over. But it's
Right.
important that if you're going to make this decision to switch to the ketogenic diet, you'll want to really adhere to a lower carb idea. Because if you kind of go a couple days keto, pop up
Hmm.
and do high carbs for a couple days, and then try to go back to keto, one, you're missing the benefits of the
Right.
ketogenic diet that it would have. But secondly, you're probably going to continue to experience this just feeling really bad,
Yeah.
because your body's it doesn't know exactly what you're going to try to. It's going to take what you consume, and it's going to convert it to energy. Your body's good at adjusting. Your metabolism is good at regulating. But if you're all over the place here, you know,
Hmm.
it's really not going to be the best of your experience. So just wanted to kind of relay that. Anything that you wanted to talk about when it comes to the keto flu?
No, besides the fact that like if you're gonna pursue this diet, like you need to stick to get through that uncomfortable phase to like actually get to the benefits. If you can't stick to that uncomfortable phase, this might not be the diet for you.
Yes. It's my
Yeah.
last recommendation is to pick up the book that I mentioned by Lane Norton, Fat Loss Forever. And
Hmm.
he actually breaks down in the book, I think, in a really succinct fashion, like what happens, like the first 12 hours that you're starting to apply in getting into ketosis, and what
Hmm.
happens the next couple of days, and kind of a breakdown of what happens. If you want more details, I would reference that book.
Yeah.
And he also goes into like some best practices for adhering to that particular diet. He does this with some other diets, but he definitely zeroes in on the ketogenic diet because there's been a lot of abuse there that he has seen. So just wanted to relay that resource to you.
I like it.
All right.
I like it.
Next.
Next. All right, we're gonna talk like low carb / Atkins diet. Atkins diet still pretty hot on the market. It was super hot starting in the 1960s when it was originally brought around. Um, and this again is like this is a pretty extreme diet when it's actually followed. Um, you probably seen Atkins bars, shakes, candies, and stuff like that at the store because they have like their own whole line of like snacks and protein shakes and things like that. So that's one of the reasons it's like pretty still hot is it's
Yep.
still like in people's faces at the store. So the breakdown of the Atkins diet is it's kind of a phased diet. There's 4 total phases. The first one being like the most extreme, very extreme. And basically it takes out everything except for lean proteins and vegetables and like a minimal amount of fats. So we're talking extremely bland diet. And you're not eating very much the first 2 to 4 weeks. Basically, they want you to stay in this phase 1 for as long as it takes you to lose about 10 pounds. But again, if we're eating a very low carb diet and very low calorie diet, a lot of what you're losing in that 10 pounds is water weight. And only after you lose that 10 pounds, then they start bringing in things like more vegetable options, a little bit of fruit. The problem I have with this diet is it's extremely restrictive. It is not sustainable at all by any stretch of the imagination. But they actually pretty much emphasize they don't want it to be sustainable. Like it's like you go through, you lose the weight as quickly as possible, and slowly advance out of the stages. And they work through, a lot of what they do is working with like net carbs and things like that as well. And for those who don't know, net carbs are basically carbohydrates and you subtract out the fiber that's in what you're eating, which is why they emphasize a high vegetable intake for this diet. So for example, like a cup of broccoli has about 5 carbs in it, but it also has 2.6 grams of fiber. So a cup of broccoli, they consider to be only 2.4 carbs. It's pretty simple math. The reason I don't like net carb math is, one, it really only works for like high vegetable intake, high fruit intake, which automatically you're going to lose weight on anyways. And you'll see a lot of like breads, boxed brownies, granola, things like that are like net carbs because it all has fiber in it. And like as great as that stuff is, it's still a caloric intake regardless, right? So
Yes.
Calories are calories. Like it does not matter if it's net carbs or regular carbohydrates. When I work with clients, I only work on regular carbs. Like we are not doing any extra math that we need to be doing. Calories are calories, and what you are eating as far as like the amount of macronutrients is what matters. Yeah, this diet is a tough one. I think what also bothers me about it is they really push their own products on this one. And so if you have a sweet tooth, go buy a box of their version of a candy bar. It's literally that. I've bought them before because I was curious about them. And it's full of fake sugars. So you're still getting that like dopamine hit when you're eating it. You're still getting that satisfaction of I can still have chocolate. But the problem with this diet is it's not teaching you to eat well long term. It's just teaching you to substitute out with their products. And like that's probably one of my like biggest issues with it. Is again, like they get you to lose the weight, but are you sustaining the weight loss? One thing they do have right is once you get to phase 4, they do teach you reverse dieting, actually.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
They teach you to bring your carbohydrates back up slowly to get your metabolism running off of an increased caloric intake without gaining weight. Now, however, I don't think most people actually follow that because it's a very slow reverse dieting, very slow. But I know that I'm going to guess the reason they do the very slow reverse dieting is because they don't want people to freak out about the fact that the scale is going to go up a little bit regardless, because you're increasing your carbs, your water weight is going to go up. So I think they do a very slow reverse dieting so that you barely see the tiny changes over a course of several weeks, honestly.
Yeah.
Depending on how much weight you have to lose, the reverse diet could take you quite a while. Well, the diet in general could take you like months upon months, and then the reverse diet almost an equal amount of months. So I've done reverse dieting before myself. I've done it with clients. I would personally do the reverse dieting faster, but in a way that like also isn't going to like scare people, because you're going to see the scale jump up just by water weight, 2-3 pounds. That's just normal. It's not fat. So they have the reverse dieting going for them, but again, this is not a sustainable diet. Will you lose weight on it? Probably. Can you do this diet without using their products? Absolutely. But they definitely push their stuff on here. So I would say if you're going to go for something really extreme like this, have some realistic expectations at the end of it, knowing like the ultimate weight loss, add 2 or 3 pounds of water back. Know that you are going to be in a pretty significant caloric deficit for weeks on end if you're actually going to follow it. And the reverse dieting is going to take time.
Yeah, man, that's such great advice.
Yeah.
I was reading an article on WebMD on the Atkins diet,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically said like, and it actually really lines up with what you said are kind of the main negative points of this diet. Interesting though, I didn't know about the reverse dieting, so that is fascinating. That is a plus. At least
that
there's
is
an
a plus. I was pretty
to,
impressed.
yeah, attempt to kind of get back to like, this is not designed to be forever like this.
Right.
Still, the education part seems to be a little bit lacking, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I'd love to dive deeper into see like how much they explain like net carbs, but it sounds a little bit more like they could probably use a lot of jargon to make it sound scientific in the best way. And of course, I mean, there is something to say about fiber, having higher fibers and all that kind of stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
I like your approach though of saying, hey, calories are calories. We're not going to try to do this crazy math type of stuff.
Yeah. Net carbs just give people an excuse to eat not well.
I think that's good. Like, so they put in this article a couple of things. One of the negatives is excluding healthy foods, like some like a restriction on fruit.
Yes, they restrict. You are not allowed to have fruit the first however many weeks it takes you to lose the 10 pounds. No fruit. And then even after that, they only want you to have like minimal amounts.
Yeah, and then there's like some vegetables that are no as well.
Oh yeah,
that don't quite fit. And so some of the micronutrients like vitamins and minerals is harder to get because of the restriction that they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just overall causes nutrition deficiencies and can cause some health issues. There's some side effects to this particular low carb diet because you have electrolyte imbalances.
Yep.
I don't know if you mentioned constipation on this one, but dangerously low blood sugar, and usually like some people have had kidney issues by an extreme version of Atkins diet. You mentioned the promotes processed foods, so I won't dive into that, but they're all their little sweet little snacks that they would promote. And one doctor scientist that was evaluating the Atkins diet on this article said that we don't have evidence that this diet is good for you on a long-term basis. And
It's
he
not
has
even
looked at,
sustainable on a long-term basis.
yeah, he was looking at several studies that went from like 2 years and beyond, and it
Yeah.
just didn't seem to be any evidence that this was like a really good sustainable option. So, and
Yeah.
that kind of goes back to like, hey, is there good points? Yeah. Is it optimal? Probably not.
No.
And you probably can find something that would balance the nutrition better, and the whole counting net calories can be a little awkward and confusing. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see too, like, I mean, there are people, like particular older people, that still will adhere to Atkins. But I feel like,
Right.
and correct me if I'm wrong on this, and by the way, I'm just stating this from my own intuition, but I feel like the popularity of Atkins has definitely declined. Some of these other ones are very much more popular, but older
Yeah.
generation, baby boomers particularly, because I think this particular diet scheme came up in the 60s, you
Right.
know. So I think that's when it really started to take its highest popularity, 60s, 70s into the 80s. Even though I know I was talking about my mom, she had tried several different diets. She did Weight Watchers. I think she saw the most success from that. She
Mm-hmm.
also did try Atkins diet.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about Atkins in the home growing up. So
Atkins
yeah, those
shakes,
are,
Atkins bars.
oh yeah, that was a
Mm-hmm.
great overview. And I think, are we going to try to cover two more, right?
2 more. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not
Yeah, I
going to try
know.
to interrupt you as much. No, you're good. This is
Oh, you're
great,
fine.
Amber. This is great info. So what is the next one? I think this is number 4. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this one, I'm gonna be straight up mean on this one. Like
Ooh, meet
yeah,
Amber. Here we
I
go.
can't. No. So I'm gonna talk about systems. All right, like diet systems. So we're talking Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Optavia,
Dropping
everything.
names, people. She's
Yeah,
dropping
I am.
names.
I'm dropping names because these companies prey upon men and women who feel like they can't lose the weight, and they're feeling extremely discouraged. So we're going to spend hundreds of dollars on these products to get magic results. That is what they freaking promise. You can watch any of their commercials. They promise 10, 15, 20 pounds within 6 to 8 weeks, gone off of our system. And you know what? Yeah, you might lose that weight really fast, but as soon as you get off of their systems, you're going to gain it all back, because their food and their supplements that they sell is literally chock full of junk. All right.
Mm.
Specifically Optavia. All right. I have watched people be on this system. Yeah, you're going to lose weight by starving yourself. Every single one of these systems, you are literally freaking starving yourself. They don't give you more than 12 to 1400 calories a day, which is not enough. It is not enough. You should not be on a diet that low unless you're in a freaking bodybuilding competition. So if you're not going for a bodybuilding competition, you should be eating more than that. A freaking 5-year-old should be eating 12 to 1400 calories.
I was going to say, this is like just like a little kid
Yes.
version of what they would intake in a day.
So
Crazy.
basically, what these systems, specifically like Jenny Craig and Nutrisystem, these are the ones that come in with easy weight loss. Everything's handed to you. So you spend anywhere from $350 to like $500 a month for a single person. All right. That's a whole family freaking grocery budget. But you spend $350 to $500 on these prepackaged meals. All right. So they do simplify it. I'll give them that. But these are extremely low calorie meals. All right. Everything's processed, everything's prepackaged. I'm not saying it's all bad food. Like, they definitely give decent amount of protein in most of their stuff. So I'll give them that. They tout delicious foods. They make this food palatable. Okay. So they make it very tasty. There's a lot of chemicals in it. That's just straight up. And again, you're spending lots and lots of money for a simplified system that is extremely low calorie. All right. Optavia, I have nothing good to say about this company whatsoever. I have read in on
Oh,
this company. I have read their packaging. I have read what goes into their little supplements and snacks. And it is junk. It is junk. It's a lot of soy. It's a lot of soybean oils. It's a shit ton of fake sugars. And you get, depending on your body size, you get 4 to 6 of their snacks a day. So it's all of their food, all of it. And then you get one real meal that is supposed to be low carb, high protein at the end of the day or somewhere in the day. And you literally starve yourself. You are literally starving yourself. And yeah, are you going to lose weight if you can stick to it? Absolutely. But what you're putting in your body is literal junk. It's no good. You give yourself, there's so many people who do these diets, like these extreme diets. Either you're coming into it at the end of your rope, right? You've tried everything else, nothing's sticking. You're not, quote unquote, meant to be skinny. And then you find this and you lose a bunch of weight and you're like, cool, I can stay on it. But I have seen people develop eating disorders from using these companies. Like, I have such big issues. You're spending hundreds of dollars on something that is extremely short term. They don't teach you how to eat. Nothing. Like, I have a friend who has been on Optavia for close to 8 years.
Whoa.
And she stays on their system to keep the weight off. Because she doesn't know how to eat real food and keep the weight off.
Yeah.
Like that's a problem. That's a big problem. So she spends hundreds of dollars on supplements and these little stupid ass snacks that every freaking month, and just to keep the weight off. Like that's a problem.
Yeah.
Big problem.
It's almost like a kind of prison, isn't it?
It is.
Like,
it really is.
They're just kind of stuck. I was thinking though, like, to like, for those who listening in, make sure that there's not a misunderstanding here. Like, I, for a while, one time I was really trying to hone in my body composition, but I was really super busy. So I opted in for a company that sends you meals, and this particular company did actually a really good breakdown of macronutrients. I can actually change my macronutrients in the meals of what I want, but like higher proteins, and I can play with the carbs and fats. But it was a company called Trifecta.
Trifecta is a good company. They create really clean meals.
Yeah. So we're not against somebody buying into a system that will help them adhere to something long-term. So I was really busy, wanted to see my body composition change, but I also just felt like, I just don't feel like I have time to prep as much.
Right.
And I had a little bit more cash flow in that season. So I was like, I'm going to opt in for this. And it really worked well. But I used it as a tool, not a crutch.
Well, and I think Trifecta and another brand, Factor, they don't tout being like this amazing weight loss system. They tout being a simplified meal prep with easy to track macros. They don't promise an end all be all.
Oh, you mean Trifecta doesn't?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Factor.
That's what I thought. No, you're right. Like they don't. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I've seen some commercials where, like, they stress the importance of, like, hey, there's nothing magical about, these meals or anything like that. This is just helping you adhere. This is cutting down on your time of preparation so you can focus on other things. And so it's just kind of convenience is what they're selling.
Yeah.
Like, it's good quality meals, but you also get that convenience. You get your life back without doing that. So these are all great things. If you know Amber and I, we are all for optimizing things.
Yeah.
But we're against two things. We're against where people are selling a bunch of crap when it comes to what they say it does and it actually doesn't. So we were like, hey, we want to call that out. And that particular thing. And then just kind of like, okay, this might be a good thing, but now you're over promising it. You're overextending what it actually will do. And so that's what, like, we like to try to call out here. I know, I don't know if you want to say any more about those, but I know you want to hit on one more diet.
I do. I'll finish out. So I'll just say, just to finish out a little less feisty, is the problem with these extreme systems is they basically spoon feed you everything. They don't really teach you a lot. And most people that are on these, pre-made systems that are really strict, and you just eat our food and you just follow our program, is people go back to eating. Once they lose the weight, they go back to eating the way they were before. You've learned almost nothing. And I emphasize almost nothing because I won't blanket statement that you learn nothing.
Sure.
But a lot of people go back to eating the way they were before, and they gain the weight back, or at least they gain some of it back. Sustainable weight loss happens when you nourish your bodies with food that thrives us. All right. Opting in for a long-term commitment, not these short-term, quick weight loss things. That's the problem I have with most diets, is people want quick results, and that is not, it's not sustainable, and it is not something that's going to be actually changing up your lifestyle. And that's what Mind and Body is about. We want to teach people. We are here to teach people how to change your lifestyle, to have more energy, to sleep better, to have better hormones, to have a better sex life, to feel better without clothes on, or feel better at the beach, or be able to run around with your kids. We're not here just to be like, hey, we can help you lose weight. Losing weight is one of the benefits. But we want you to not just lose the weight, we want you to live well. And so that's why John and I are here doing what we're doing. It's because we
100%.
want people to thrive. We are not put on this earth to just survive. We are here to thrive.
I love that. This whole concept of being fully alive. And I think all of us, innate within us, we desire that. And I think that's why we end up chasing after all these things, because
Yes.
they package that emotion in their
Yes.
product so well that we feel like, oh, if I have this, I'll feel fully alive. But
Yes.
it's just a smokescreen.
It is a
And
smokescreen.
and
It's a
it
good word.
hurts so many people. And I will say this, just kind of a pause. If anybody here, like, you have a particular thing that you're trying, I just had somebody reach out to me about like a particular protein snack that they asked. They're like, hey, is this a good source of protein, or is this a good, type of programming? We would love to help you with that. And if you have any questions, or if you'd like us to do a podcast on something particular, we do take requests on stuff like that. So feel free to, offer that request. So
Yeah.
last diet, here we
Last
go.
but not least. So again, this is just like going over some of the bigger, more popular diets right now. This is definitely not all of them. And at the end, I'll kind of just like I can throw some blanket statements out about diets in general. But the last one is the paleo diet. So, the paleo. I know lots of people who've done the paleo diet. This one's interesting. All right, so basically, this is a diet based off of eating like our ancestors. A lot of people call it the caveman diet. Basically, if it cannot be gathered or hunted, you don't eat it. All right. So the whole diet is based off of meat, vegetables, fruit, nuts, eggs, and some oils. But that's it. And it is, I mean, the basis of the diet is pretty ingenious and has really good context. Like, this is how our ancestors ate. There was no processed food. There was very little dairy. I think our caveman ancestors would have figured out that, cows and goats and whatnot all have milk that you can drink. But this particular diet stays away from that. So no dairy, no grains at all. I find that one interesting. Obviously no bread and pasta, and nothing packaged. And I'm like, okay, so like, it's a very healthy, very clean diet. I'll give it that. What makes this diet very difficult is, especially in America in this modern day and age,
Sounds
is that
good.
how you say it? Okay. We are surrounded by processed foods, fried foods, packaged things, everything. Most things that are like on TV or in front of us on social media are all from big box food companies. So this is a hard diet to do when you're surrounded with all of the other stuff. And I also find this one interesting. It also, some paleo people eat like potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, and some people don't. I would say if you're not eating something like a potato, you're eating extremely low carbohydrate. Um,
Mm.
but it's a clean diet, so I have nothing to say on that one. It's very rich in nutrients and things like that. Um, it's very much prioritizes protein, natural fiber, things like, and I'm like, okay. I have a cookbook that's like paleo based, and like there's a lot of options. There's a lot of things you can do with this, but it's hard to sustain. Is really what it boils down to. Um, they do not track in this diet, so again, because it's kind of on the lower carb, it would be very difficult to overeat on this diet. Um, but yeah, there's definitely there's no tracking or anything like that. It's just eating super clean. The only thing you really need to track is like monitoring your intake of like oils and nuts and seeds, because you're allowed to have all of that, and that can add up very quickly. This diet does tout, with scientific backing. It helps inflammation, bringing down blood pressure, balancing out your hormones, your lipid levels, and and so like it brings all of your biomarkers into a really healthy place. So it's a very agreeable diet. Um, but again, you are going to struggle to keep this one long term unless you really set yourself up for success. So, what are your thoughts on this one? I'm curious.
I yeah, out of the ones that we've listed, like I don't dislike this one with a few modifications. Like
Yeah,
I actually kind of like this whole like caveman diet idea and like gathering things from the land, type of
yeah,
idea. Um, I've definitely seen some extreme versions. I'm not sure. You know who the Liver King is? Have you seen his stuff?
yeah.
He's a jack
I
dude.
think you
Like
and I have talked about the Liver King.
probably he's jack, no doubt. Like and he's got this persona that's actually just I don't know. It's interesting. He always is like Liver King out,
Does
across the
he
throat.
does he eat paleo?
Um, Not exactly.
Okay.
It is a kind of a caveman
Esque
diet
diet.
of sort, but
Mm.
he eats a lot of raw meat
Oh, that's disgusting.
and like yeah, it gets gross actually after that. So a lot of like raw liver, like bull testicles. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
Uh, okay, cool. So I'm definitely not joining this group for sure. Um, but yeah, there's he does all kinds of stuff like on his show. Lots of but um it is kind of high in fat too. Like he'll just eat like a whole stick of butter, like eat butter, it's good for you, and he'll just like eat the stick of butter and have meat. It's like it's kind of like all over the place, but there is some of that nine ancestral tenets that he follows, and some of
Gotcha.
it is kind of follows the caveman type of thing. He is entertaining, of course. Not trying to shoot any hate, but he did finally confess that he was on a ton of gear,
Yeah,
PEDs, because he was saying
I
like,
did
hey, if
see that.
you go back to like eating raw liver and bull testicles and all that kind of stuff,
This
you'll
is
get
what
like
you'll
me.
look like.
Exactly. And then it's just like, oh, and I spend 10,000 a month on gear. It's like, okay, wow, that is a crazy amount. But I whatever he wants to do is totally fine. I'm glad that he was finally honest. At least it seems like he was honest about that.
Right.
But the diet itself, I see some people really abusing this kind of stuff or doing some things that could potentially harm them.
Mm.
But as a diet itself, I feel like a few modifications and it's pretty good. I think
Yeah.
it can be done pretty well.
There's a lot of things about the paleo diet that I would adopt lifestyle like focusing on whole foods and things like that. And this is actually how I eat a lot of the time. Dairy doesn't tend to sit well with me, so it's easy to avoid the dairy. And then avoiding a lot of packaged foods. So I guess this is where, like, when I coach people on nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
I would never label it paleo diet, but I definitely encourage like a 75% whole foods focused diet. I would like people to eat a little bit more whole foods than 75%, but I feel like that's a stretch for a lot of people. And then having, but when I also talk whole foods, I also encourage, like, you can have rice, you can have quinoa, things like that. So I don't take all the grains out and stuff like that. I think that makes it 10 times harder. But I do like the basis of the paleo diet is eating mostly whole foods. Yeah.
I do too. Like, and some people really like boundaries. They like particular things. So they like having something that brings with it like dietary restrictions. And I always tell people, like, there's three kind of restrictions, fundamental ones for like that people use to kind of aid in losing fat or even body recomposition: calorie restriction, time restriction, dietary restriction. Those are the three.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these are identified in a way that they have some type of dietary restriction,
Right.
And like next to no carbs, or low, like no dairy or next to no dairy or something like that. And it's totally fine if it's sustainable within, if you're not in the extremes, if you can come to a more balanced view of it. I personally like to say, I'm with you. Majority of your food should be whole foods. You should shy away as much as you can from processed. I tend to like to be higher, like in that 85 to 90% whole foods, and then the 10% can be more the fun type of foods. It's not going to change your health markers if you have that. If 90% of what you're eating is whole foods, you're going to be totally good to go on that. And I just think being able to enjoy a wide variety of things is going to be more sustainable, and also helps you not like demonize any particular food group. And again,
we do
sometimes
not demonize food groups over here.
Dietary restriction, I think, primarily should be if you have some type of inflammation reaction to foods,
right?
That you're like okay,
me
this
with
is
dairy.
causing me gut issues or whatever. It's like, adapt to what works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't a magic in, like a dietary restriction when it comes to fat loss, except if it helps you get into that caloric deficit, that helps. Go for it. So hopefully for those listening in, I hope this was helpful to kind of get an overview, things you just want to walk away with.
Yeah.
There is no magic pill when it relates to diet.
No magic pill.
You want to try to find something that's sustainable, that you can adhere to. There are a few fundamentals, like for fat loss, you want to be in a caloric deficit. If you want to have good muscle mass and change your body composition, you want to have a higher protein diet, because that's
get that toned look.
And then everything else is actually a little bit like you could play around with it. If you want to try something that's higher fat and lower carb, or even higher carb and lower fat, obviously you want to get a certain amount for brain function and just protein, even helping with protein synthesis and stuff. Like having fat in your diet is good. But just try to be balanced. And I think if you really learn this well, you'll learn to pinpoint extremes and how they're overpromising and they're playing on desperate people who are like, I've tried so many things. Oh, here's something new. And, you think from a marketing standpoint, a lot of people are like, hey, if I market this right, I could get pretty rich off of my new system. And I'm not against systems. Like here at Mind and Body, we'd love to. We have systems. We'll be like, hey, use this. These are great maybe even like, hey, this protein's really good, or like if we suggest like a protein powder to supplement what you're not getting in your diet. But what we want to push for is we want to set a right expectation about every single, whether it's a program, whether it's a supplement, and not overpromise them, and realizing you're not going to get the results outside of really hard work, of working out in the gym, being there, doing the thing, and also adhering to a particular diet where you're getting good nutritious foods. Those are going to be fundamental no matter where you go. So hopefully that was helpful. Amber, any closing thoughts? Smartest of smarts?
Smartest of smarts. Last thing, guys, is one, if you see a diet that seems too good to be true, it probably is. If you are going to try a new way of eating, you need to stick to it for at least 8 weeks, bare minimum, so that you actually will see if it works for you or not. And that means that's a commitment. Like, if you are going to commit to losing the weight and being healthier, you need to look at this long term. Do not look for quick fixes. All right. If you actually want to sustain the weight loss, you need to find something that fits your lifestyle that'll actually set you up for success in this area. Pills, cleanses, and quick promising diets are not going to get you the results that you want in the end. So stop spending your money on that stuff and find something that's actually going to work for you long term, make you healthier, change your lifestyle, give you longevity, and make you feel good about yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. So in our next episode, I think we're going to do some conversation, and I could be wrong here. I was just looking at our upcoming episodes that we're planning, and I think we're going to be doing one on exercise as it relates to fat loss, because any exercise could be good, but some could be potentially harmful or just run you into the ground. And so we want to talk about exercise and fat loss this next week, and we'll probably have a couple more sessions in this series. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day.